bayan ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Bayang mag-ibig sa sinamanan, alam ng puso sa limit ko'y buhay. Lupang inilang, wala kang mag-ibig sa mandulupin. Ikaw masisipin sa nalagang tulong sa simula sa langit ko pagkaw. Nalilagang tulakaw sa pagkayang inaaman. Sa lang magawag ko'y natunay na nakikinig. Ang ituwid na parang na kailan ang kanyang matidinig. Lumapaparaw kang walang pansin ka. Huwag nangit sa amin mo. Ang higaya na pagkay malaki. Ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. Simula noon hanggang ngayon, isang naging layon. Magkaisaan magbuklod, kaibigan ay marunong. Malayo mula sa hamon ng daga, nilang isang pangalit na umalag. Pinagako sa puso at paniniwala, ang ihaw para sa kabataan. Pagsamay na buhay, mula na pag-iso at buhay. Kapayapaan na tarungan ay ating lang nakamtan. Alam tulira, pagpalain mo sa mundo. Magsamoro, lagi kang mamahalin. Walang pipigil sa damdamin, mga pagkako'y tutupanin. Habang buhay kami sa'yo'y magpapatay, mananatili sa puso't isipan. Ang nakapagbuting ay nanabuhos ng buhay, nasa pilang may kapal. Pagsamay na buhay, mula na pag-iso at buhay. Kapayapaan na tarungan ay ating ang nakamtan. Alam tulira, pagpalain mo sa mundo. Ang Gobyerno ng Station King Balila ay tumatalaay sa may subang kasalukuyan at napapanahon. Makapolitika, makatingin na komentaryo at balita ang programa ito'y patas sa lahat. Walang inilingan, walang tinatanggihan, at walang tinatanggihan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay pambis-sabis sa makahaminan at trabaho lamang.
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Time check natin sa umagang ito, 59 minutos, pasado po alas 6 mga kababayan. No? Anong kalendaryo natin pa buenas sa araw ng Lunes? 19 po, Okay, 19 po ng Pebrero 2024. Araw po ng Pabuenas, araw ng Lunes, no? Araw kasi ng unang trabaho po sa linggo. Sa semana po mga kababayan, no? Sa unang semana. Okay, pero ako Sabado kahapon, okay, trabaho ko mga kababayan, no? Okay, nag-hook up ako ng First Regional General Assembly po ng United Bangsamoro Justice Party, no? Okay, at then kahapon ng cutting ribbon po ng General Headquarter nila po dyan po sa Tamuntaka 1, Cotabato City, no? So, mga kalaban po ng United Bangsamoro Justice Party, sabihin natin handa po ang party nito. Okay, ang party po ng umpungan, ang MILF organization mga suki. Handa, okay, makipaglaban po sa mga kabilang panig po mga suki, no? Handa sila. Okay, na-announce ko nung Sabado mga 15,000, hindi po 15,000 sa on record, okay, sa attendance sheet, umabot po ng 22,000 mahigit po. Hindi ko lang nakuha ang eksakto, no? Pero, okay, sa kabuuan po, umabot po ang General Assembly yan ng 22,000 ang mag-participate mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Ganon po karami. Ayan. So, okay, yung mga kumakalaban po sa administration po, sa incumbent po ng Bangsamoro Transition Authority, alam na nila kung paano po ang politika mga kababayan, no? Okay, lalo na po mga traditional politician, katulad ng sinabi ko, wala po ang Lanao del Sur, itong si Bombi Tadyong, wala po ang Holo Sulu, si Abdur Sakurtan, Gobernador ng Hulu, wala din po ang Maguindanao del Sur, si Bay Mariam Sangki, mga udadato. Sa programa ang nakalista doon, okay, Gobernador namin ng Basilan, Jim Hataman Sanliman, and then ng Tawi-Tawi si Mang Sali po mga kababayan, na? Okay, Governor Mang Sali. And then, katumbas din ng governor, yung sentro po ng BAM government, yung Cotabato City mga kababayan, no? Si Muhammad Bruce de la Cruz Matabalaw po mga suki, no? So, yan. Okay, yan po ang expectation natin, maglaban-laban po kontra sa mga opposition po pagdating ng election po ng regional government, okay, sa itong 2025 mga suki, no? Hindi ata ako nakabati, no? Okay, magandang umaga. Good morning mga kababayan. Okay. Sa universal greeting natin, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, no? Dito po sa Consolidated News natin, okay, mga suki-suki natin, na? Okay, sa platform po ng ADLSNTV Corporation. Ayan. So, yan po ang bati natin po sa araw ng Lunes, sa araw nito mga kababayan, no? Okay, itong mga kababayan ko taga Zamboanga City, 98 po ng barangay. Okay, good morning. Buenos dias con todos mga vecinos o mga kompoblanos, no? Okay, meron ako alam po ng sa District 2, no? Okay, may plano po mag-return bout. Okay, itong kaibigan natin po, okay, si Ibnu Hajar, okay, Turabin po mga suki, no? Okay, tatakbo daw siya. Okay, sabi ko sa kanya, okay, maggawa ka ng magawa ka ng program mo ba? Okay, para sa mga public service dito sa Zamboanga, sa District 2. Okay, dalahin natin dito sa programa ko. Okay, maganda may public service ba? Okay, kasi yan ang kailangan po ng mga botante. Okay, meron kang serbisyo publiko para sa taong bayan, no? So, yan. Handa ko, kasabi ko ang programa ko ay magtulong sa iyo. Okay, kung kinakailangan. Okay, kaibigan, kasama po sa Metro Manila. Okay, si Ibnu Hajar, Ibnu Turabin po mga kababayan, na. Kaibigan ng mga matalik na kaibigan na ayang po si Ibnu Turabin, na. Sabi ko, handa ako tumulong sa iyo. District 1 ako, hindi naman ako magtakbo. District 2 ka, pero sa programa lang. Sa pagbanggit-banggit lang ng pangalan mo, na. So yan po ang kaibigan. Okay, babalik daw siya sa politika. Okay, sa bilang independent party mga suki, mga kababayan, na. Ayan. Okay, sana sinuswerte ang tao yan, no? Suswertein siya manalo. Nako. Okay, magaling yan si Ibnu mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay, magaling yan. Okay. Wala ka kulang Cavite. Kulang, ano ba yan? Kabitin? Okay, wala ka. Wala. Okay, kayang-kaya po ni kaibigan Ibnu Turabin, no? Okay, sana sana ay palarin na siya rito sa election ito, mga kababayan, no? Ibs Turabin. Ayan. Okay. So, yan po ang alam ko na. Okay, kung sino po ay sa District 2, mga kababayan, mga suki, no? Ako sabi ko, bakit ayaw mo mag-party? Ayan. Dapat mag-party ka. Okay, kung open slot, okay, sa mga party, maganda mag-party, mga suki, na. Ayan, Ibnu Turabin. Okay, nanay po ni Mayor ng Isabela City. Tatay, hindi nanay. Tatay po ng Mayor ng Isabela City, si Mayor Dada Turabin, mga suki, na. Okay, mga kaibigan kami sa Metro Manila. Okay. Parehas po nag-lingaw-lingaw, nag-aral po sa Metro Manila, no? So, yan. Okay. Handa tayo magtulong, okay. Kung ano maitulong po sa kanya, no? 2025 pa naman. Okay. Yan po. Paunang abiso na. Paunang notisya. Okay, para kay Ibnu Turabin, no? Ayan. So, yan pa. Okay, magantay-antay na tayo mabuo yung mga grupo yan. Okay, ang team nila Sir Solobrigat, Manong Sir Solobrigat, at saka itong si Manang Bing Climaco, Bing Salazar Climaco Salazar, Bing Climaco Salazar, mga suki, no? Okay, nagpakita na sila, meron sila publicity, okay, sa newspaper, mga suki, no? Okay, so sa incumbent, wala pa kasi hindi pa yan. Okay, lagi huling incumbent, okay, mag-form po ng kanilang partido, no? Okay, so ano pa yan? Okay, mag-public service pa yan sa Zamboanga po, mga kababayan, no? Sa konstitusyon ng Zamboanga, yung mga incumbent. Ayan. And then sa mga third party kaya. Okay, ang magandang matunog pangalan itong si Dan Vicente, no? Okay, ng Brigada. Okay, Brigada News. Station manager ng Brigada News. Duro. Okay, Zamboanga, mga kababayan, no? Matunog ang pangalan niya. At saka itong si Charlie Mariano, no? Okay, magandang mga pangalan po sa politika rito sa Zamboanga, no? Ayan. Hindi natin alam pa. Ako'y nagkuhan lang ako, no? Pero nag-imagine lang ako baka meron mga third party o kaya fourth party sa labanan po rito sa Buanga mga suki na. Ayan. So okay, balikan natin ng ibang trabaho. Okay, ayan po mga suki, mga tagapakinig, no? Okay. Pakinggan natin ang kaibigan natin ng matagal ng panahon. Okay, si former President Barack Obama sa kanyang speech. Okay, to the graduates. Michael lang ito, no? Michael lang ang ano niya rito, no? Okay, tingnan natin parang pangaral niya sa mga new graduates po. Okay, sa US mga suki, no? Okay, si kaibigan, okay, hindi makalimot. Okay, si former President Barack Obama, no? At saka yung may bahay niya. Okay, yan po ang gusto ko maging Pangulo sa Amerika mga suki. Itong 8 taon, First Lady po ng sa loob ng White House, no? White House. Pakinggan natin ang advice niya sa mga graduates. Okay, pakinggan natin, no?
Nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. You have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. Nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. You have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. Nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. You have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. Nobody is going.
Okay, tama sa sinasabi niya, no? Yung Michael lang, ginawa po ng okay, anong kumuha ito, no? Okay, rear ba ito? Okay. So, wala talagang umintindi sa iyo, no? Okay, sino magintindi sa iyo po mga suki, mga kababayan? Kaya pag failure ka sa mundong ibabaw po, wala na. Wala po magpansin sa iyo mga suki, no? Okay, tama po sinabi niya, advice niya sa mga new graduates. Okay? Kasi wala kang value po. Wala ka talagang value. Kung wala ka, mahirap ka, and then palahingi ka, okay, wala talaga papansin sa iyo mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Okay. Okay, discriminate ka talaga. Okay, kahit saan po, kahit sa Amerika, dito sa atin, kung isang failure kang tao, wala talaga. Ayan, no? Wala kang kabalyo-balyo. Okay. Sa buhay dito, no? Ako nga, mabuti may microphone ako mga kababayan. Kung wala ata ako microphone, okay, isang basura ata ako mga kababayan sa lipunan mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Maswerte ito na concept ko, itong microphone mga suki, no? Walang papansin sa akin. Ayan po. Yan po ang totoo sa buhay po dito sa daigdig mga kababayan, no? Kung isa kang failure, okay, wala. Okay, rejected ka sa society mga suki, no? Okay, pero sa Allah Ta'ala, hindi yon. Sa society lang, dito sa mundong ibabaw, Pero sa Allah Ta'ala, wala po pinipili mga suki, no? Basta malakas ang paglapit mo, o paghingi mo sa kanya, walang failure sa kanya mga suki, no? Dito lang sa daigdig. Sa society mga kawan, sa lipunan ba? Okay. Kung wala kang sinabi, okay, wala kang pera, okay, wala kang mga kotse o mga sasakyan, wala kang kagamitan, rejected ka society mga so. Tama pong sinabi niya, itong si former President Barack Obama, no? Okay. Kahit paanong kagaling mo, kung wala ka talaga. Pakinggan natin uli. Ayan.
Nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. You have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. Nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. You have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. Nobody is going to give you anything that you have not earned. Nobody cares how tough your upbringing was. Nobody cares if you suffered some discrimination. You have to remember that whatever you've gone through, it pales in comparison to the hardships previous generations endured, and they overcame them. And if they overcame them, you can overcome them too. Nobody is going.
Okay, kasi after nawala ko sa trabaho sa government, ito na isip ko mag-concept po ng microphone mga kababayan, no? Para bang may puwang lang. Okay, para mapansin lang mga suki mga kababayan, no? Para mapansin lang. Talagang totoo po, wala kang value sa society kahit saan po sa daigdig. Okay, wala kang sinabi, okay, wala kang kayamanan, pobre ka, basura ka mga suki mga kababayan, no? Okay, basura ka dito sa daigdig. Ayan. Okay, kaya nga yung mga successful people, okay, hindi po magpabalis, sabi ng yakan, no? Talagang tuloy-tuloy po ang kanyang okay, payaman, pagparami ng resources, pagparami ng asset. Yung mga mayayaman po mga suki, no? Kaya tuloy-tuloy. Dahil po yon ang iniwasan nila. Okay, pagdating tumba ka, okay, failure ka, basura ka mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Basura ka sa society. Kaya tama yon. Ayan po mga suki, no? Ayan. Okay, so kailangan mag-struggle ka talaga. Okay, paano ka makabawi man lang. Hindi na kailangan na okay, marami kang kwarto, may multimillion na, hindi na. Basta okay lang ang buhay mo rito. Pero kung may opportunity ka na dumami ang pera mo, okay, dahil po sa pagsikap, wala problema. Ayan po ang ibig sabihin po ni former President Barack Obama, no? Ayan. Sige mga suki, no? Ayan.
Some of the most successful people in the world are the ones who've had the most failures. J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter. When I stopped thinking about myself and I started thinking about how can I be useful to other people. And I think that I did not grow up
Pangaral po, no?
the person I am until I was less focused on me and I was more focused on how could I be useful? Who could I help? Because the amazing thing is when you help somebody, when you're a positive influence on somebody, when you're working hard on behalf of somebody, and you see that impact, that gives you confidence. And I stopped thinking about myself, and I started thinking about how can I be useful to other people. And I think that I did not grow up and become the person I am until I was less focused on me, and I was more focused on how could I be useful? Who could I help? Because the amazing thing is when you help somebody, when you're a positive influence on somebody, when you're working hard on behalf of somebody, and you see that impact, that gives you confidence. And I stopped thinking about myself, and I started thinking about how can I be useful to other people. And I think that I did not grow up and become the person I am until I was less focused on me, and I was more focused on how could I be useful? Who could I help? Because the amazing thing is when you help somebody, when you're a positive influence on somebody, when you're working hard on behalf of somebody, and you see that impact, that gives you confidence. And I stopped thinking about
Okay.
myself.
Sabi po ng asawa niya, no, si Michelle Obama, okay, itong tao ito, voice rules na pagbasa po ng libro po mga kababayan, no? Walang ginawa, okay, kung nasa kanyang study room may palabasan ng libro po mga kababayan, no? Okay, walang katigil-tigil. Araw-araw po magbasa ng may oras siya. Okay, para magbasa ng libro po mga sukti, no? At siya mga galing gumawa ng libro rin. Kasi communicator ang master niya mga kababayan, no? Isang abogado and then communicator pa siya mga suki. Okay, magaling gumawa ng libro, no? Okay, ang libro ko nabili sa panahon niya, yung kanyang profile, yung autobiography at saka itong Audacity of Hope mga suki, no? Libro po niya yon. Siya po mismo ang gumawa ng libro niyan, no? Ayan. So, yan po. Palabasa po ng libro. Kaibigan niya po ang libro po itong si former President Barack Obama. Okay, namin po ng kanyang may bahay. Okay, si former First Lady Michelle Obama mga kababayan na. Ayan. Palabasan ng libro. Okay. Ayan po. Okay, tingnan natin po ang turo po ng paghahanap ng kwarta. Pero hindi natin pwede ma-apply, no? Okay, sa yung mga strategy lang. Okay, kasi sa Islamic banking may mga tapakul. Okay, meron sukuk. Maraming tools to. Yung technique lang niya pag okay, paghanap ng kwarta po itong si Warren Buffett, panglima, pinakamayaman po, Amerikano po sa US. Okay, kung paano po mga technique, okay, paghanap ng kwarta, no? Ayan. Warren Buffett po ng US. Ayan.
My job as the leader of Berkshire Hathaway is to have visions and goals for the company overall with a long time horizon attached to them, and then to get those goals accomplished through other people. That's what it's all about. I can't do it myself, so I have to know where I want us to get to. I have to see over the next mountain if possible, but then I have to get a lot of other people to look over that mountain with me.
Okay, kailangan pala may goal tayo, no? Okay, isang nilalang ka dito sa daigdig. Dapat may goal ka, may pangarap ba? Ano bang gusto ko, okay, pagdating ng ganon? Okay. Anong program ko sa sarili ko? Okay. At saka pamilya ko. Kailangan na may purpose tayo, may goal para ma-achieve natin po yon mga suki, mga kababayan. No? So, Warren Buffett. O, gayahin nyo mga suki. No? Okay, gayahin nyo. Kaya nyo mo na yan mga suki. No? Ayan.
Really do the job. I mean, they are the ones that get it accomplished. So it's getting things done through other people. Now, Berkshire is like many large corporations in certain ways, but it's really quite different in many ways. We have over 150,000 people now working for Berkshire Hathaway in dozens of companies throughout this country.
Paupo ako sa kitang bewang ko, no?
We have
Paupo ako.
exactly
Makinig kayo
15.8 people in
para kayo
headquarters.
maging Warren
And Deb
Buffett.
Ray came down with me today, so we've only got 13.8 there today. And we're probably working just as well with those 13.8 as we would if Deb and I were in the office. But that's an unusual organization. We have dozens of operating managers, CEOs of their businesses out there running them today. And they do it without any direction from the home office except for one very limited piece of direction that I give them, which I'll get to in a second. But we have these people, and they're an unusual group of people running these businesses because most of them have sold their businesses to us, and they're very, very wealthy. 3/4 of our managers do not need to work financially. They have no reason financially to work. Probably 3/4 of them are worth at least $50 million, and we have some that are worth in the billions. And yet these people jump out of bed every morning and work, and they work weekends, and they love working. And why is that? And what's the key to that? The key really is the same reason I keep working. You know, I'm 72. I'm getting Social Security now, so I should be in Florida, pushing shuffleboard around or something of the sort. But I do what I can do. Anything in the world I want to do. But what I want to do is run Berkshire Hathaway. Now, why do I want to run it that way? There's a couple things. A, I get to paint my own painting. I go down there every day. And I feel like Michelangelo. They're working on the Sistine Chapel or something. Nobody else may think it's a great painting, but I get to paint my own painting. I do not have people second guessing me. I do not have people saying, "Why don't you use a little more red paint than blue paint? Why don't you paint a seascape instead of a landscape?" I get to do my own thing. It's a form of creativity. It's exactly like somebody feels it's a professional golfer or somebody feels it's a painter. They're not doing it for the money primarily. They're doing it because they like doing something well and that they happens to be down the route of their talents. And the second thing I like, frankly, is I like applause, I like appreciation. So I like having shareholders who feel good about what I've done. I mean, I have a 96-year-old aunt, and her husband went to the University of Nebraska too. And she has all her money in Berkshire Hathaway, and she counts on me. And she's out in Palm Springs now, and her whole net worth is in Berkshire. And I've got cousins, and I've got everybody in our family has got all their money in Berkshire. And so those people are counting on me. And that's kind of fun to have something where you can actually deliver for other people and change their lives in positive ways. As a matter of fact, we had a couple that nobody had ever heard of up until a few years ago. The Othmers in New York, they came from Omaha. I'm not sure which high school she went to in Omaha, probably South High. They left $750 million when they died. Nobody ever heard of them. And I think a substantial portion, went right here to the University of Nebraska. It was probably a total surprise to the university when they got, I don't know, you probably got 150 million or so. Yeah. Well, you should thank the Othmers, but nevertheless, you see the money, you see good things happening out of it. So it's fun. I mean, it beats playing golf every day or something of the sort. So I say, if that's what turns me on, what's going to turn on these managers that are out there running things like Clayton Homes or we've got a company, Flight Safety, that trains more pilots than anybody in the world. Flight Safety is run by an 85-year-old
Okay,
man.
makinig kayo para maging Warren Buffett kayo.
With $10,000 in 1951, it now trains 4 or 5 times as many pilots as non-military pilots as anybody in the world. And he is there at 85, and it's a matter of public record. He's got $1 billion worth of Berkshire shares. He works 7 days a week. He loves it. And he loves it for the same reason that I love what I do. He gets to do it his way. He buys these big simulators that you train pilots in. He doesn't have to check with me as to whether to spend $15 million for a simulator. he doesn't ask me. He knows so much more about it than I do. Why in the world would he ask me? Well, I can't tell what kind of a plane I'm in, when I'm flying around. And Al is spending a couple $100 million a year on simulators. He's spending Berkshire Hathaway money, and he never checks with Omaha. He's never had to come to Omaha for any kind of meetings. He runs his own business, and that's what he loves in life. And I let him do it. I mean, that's my contribution to it, is really turning loose his energies. And they were properly directed before we bought the company 7 or 8 years ago. Why should I think that he couldn't keep running it after that? And like I say, at 85, he's still running it. And the second thing that our managers like, in addition to this painting their own painting, is they too love applause. I report in my annual report accurately what they have accomplished, but they accomplished a lot. You heard Susan Jock, I think, some weeks ago here. Susan came to Borsheims, and she was making $4 an hour. $4 an hour. Before she was 40, she became CEO of the second largest independent jewelry operation in the United States. From $4 an hour. But it's talent, and Susan knows more about. I don't know anything about jewelry. You could hand me a phony diamond or a real diamond, I couldn't tell the difference. But if I started telling Susan what to order in the way of jewelry, or if I started telling her what kind of terms to extend to customers or who to hire or anything like that, she doesn't need that in life. She really owns Borsheims. We have the stock certificate. We get the profits. We get accustomed to. But it's her baby. It's her baby. She decides, everything about that place. And so it's her creation. And that feeling of ownership is really extraordinary. And it's so much better. I mean, it's the way I like to work. It's the way Susan Jock likes to work. It's the way Al Yoshi likes to work. And Susan, like anybody else in this world, loves being appreciated. I mean, there'd be something wrong with her if she didn't. And the truth is, nobody appreciates her more than I do. I mean, she is a talent. We are lucky to have her, and we're lucky to have all of these other managers. So leadership at Berkshire really consists of taking a bunch of people who, in a baseball analogy, would be 400 hitters, and just handing them the bat and just telling them to get up to the plate and take a big swing. There's very little to it beyond that. One thing I do is I send them a letter. We don't have meetings in Omaha. Some of our managers, there aren't any meetings, and there are no catechism or anything else. Once every 2 years, I send them a letter. This is it. Roughly one and a half pages or so. The only instruction they get from us. They don't send budgets to us. We don't care about that. Some of the companies use budgets, some don't use budgets. We adjust to them. Some of the managers I talk to a couple times a week because they like to talk frequently. Some of them I talk to literally once a year because they don't like to talk to me. And whatever, it's up to them. I adapt to them. The only thing I tell them, and this letter, which went out January 20th, 2003, it says it's been 2.5 years since my last memo. Now, how many big companies have the managers out there been 2.5 years since they've heard from the home office? It's been 2.5 years since my last memo. Here are a couple things to keep in mind. And number one, and this is number one every time, this doesn't change. It won't change 2 years from now or 4 years from now or 6 years from now. Number one, we can afford to lose money, even a lot of money. We cannot afford to lose reputation, even a shred of reputation. Let's be sure that everything we do in business can be reported on the front page of a national newspaper in an article written by an unfriendly but intelligent reporter. In many areas, including acquisitions, Berkshire's results have benefited from its reputation, and we don't want to do anything that in any way can tarnish it. Last year, Berkshire was ranked by Fortune as the 4th most admired company in the world. This year, we were 3rd in the United States. They just published it. It took us 37 years to get there, but we could lose it in 37 minutes. And that's the message. I mean, we can lose money. It's nicer to make money, but we'll figure out ways to make money. But we can't lose a shred of reputation because you don't get it back. And you can. I said 37 minutes, but you can lose it a lot faster than that. You can lose it in 5 minutes. And in fact, I was talking to Bruce coming in, and he did some work around Solomon Brothers, and I went back there 11 years ago because this firm, it had the 2nd largest balance sheet in the United States at that time. It was a preeminent firm on Wall Street. John Goodfriend, who ran it, had his picture on the front of Business Week as the king of Wall Street. And in April late in April 1991, he made a fateful decision. It was reported to him that an employee down the line had flim-flammed the U.S. Treasury, had broken some rules, tried to play games with him. And John did not report that fact to the Treasury or to the Federal Reserve or to the SEC or to anybody else. He didn't do anything wrong himself, but he got behind the curve. He didn't report it. The president of the company, Tommy Strauss, didn't report it. If you saw that Katie Couric show on Sunday night on the Central Park Jogger, Tom Strauss was on there, but Tom Strauss ended up losing he was president of Solomon Brothers. John was chairman, John Goodfriend. They didn't do anything. They dawdled. And after a few weeks, the same guy that had committed the terrible acts earlier, on May 15th, he did the same thing again at a Treasury auction. And now they were in this terrible pickle because they'd known about this on about April 28th, that this guy was a bad actor, and they hadn't done anything. And now on May 15th, he does the same thing again. And now if they go, they start feeling if they go and talk about it, the people will say, well, why weren't you in here before? So they just kept trying to shove it out of their mind and do other things. And it came within inches of destroying the firm. It destroyed their careers. I mean, John Goodfriend had spent 30 years in Wall Street, had a fine reputation. The king of Wall Street was brought down by one simple act of omission. All he had to do was pick up the phone. Jerry Corrigan was head of the New York Fed. He had to pick up the phone and say, Jerry, you won't believe this, but this crazy guy in our Treasury Department, Donnie Mosier, has just done this thing, and I'm terribly embarrassed. What can we do to make it right? I mean, and Jerry Corrigan, being Jerry Corrigan, would have turned red in the face and gotten very mad and issued a lot of language I couldn't repeat here. But in the end, he would have said, thanks for calling and telling us about it immediately. And we'll slap a fine on you or do whatever is appropriate. And the next day, the firm would have gone on fine. But John Goodfriend, actually, a perfectly okay guy, but he didn't act when it counted. And Tommy Strauss, who was number two, the same way. And later on, they were fined and certainly kicked out of the securities industry. And Solomon barely survived. 8,000 employees around the world had their future in real jeopardy because of that single act. So just apply the newspaper test. That's what I tell our managers. I could have a 1,000-page book of ethics. I could have all kinds of rules and hundreds of but in the end, just all you got to do is think about do you really want what you're doing put on the front page of the paper tomorrow to be read by your parents, by your spouse, by your kids, by your neighbors, by your coworkers? And if you're embarrassed about it, just forget about it. You're all going to do well financially. The nice thing about it is, you live in America in the year 2003. You don't live in Bangladesh. You don't live in America, of 1790 when it was. You live in a society which has a GDP of over 10 trillion, and you can just pick up the crumbs and you're going to do great. You've all got the qualities. It takes three qualities essentially to do well, and extremely well actually in this country. It takes intelligence, it takes energy, and it takes integrity. Now, everybody in this room has the requisite intelligence. You wouldn't be here if you didn't. I mean, it doesn't take 180 IQs, although I'm sure you all have those, but it takes reasonable intelligence. You're getting a great education. You've got the energy. That's why you've shown up in school. And it takes integrity. And I say, if you don't have integrity, we don't want to hire somebody that's got intelligence and energy if they don't have integrity. We'd rather hire somebody that's dumb and lazy if they don't have integrity, because they probably never get around to cheating us or doing something of the sort. Last thing in the world I want is somebody that's lacks in there. Mosier had intelligence and energy at Solomon. He was head of the government bond trading thing, and he had lots of intelligence and he had lots of energy, and he went to jail, and he almost brought down the firm. And integrity is absolutely an option. You may not be able to throw a football 60 yards, and you may not be able to run the 100 in 9.8. You may not be able to sink 3-pointers but you can choose where you stand on the integrity scale. You weren't born wired one way or the other. That is an absolute choice you make. The heroes I've had in life have been the people that I felt stood out in that respect. My number one hero was my dad, but I've had other heroes, Tom Murphy, Ben Graham, people like that. The reason I admired them was not because they were the smartest people in the world, although they were plenty smart. And it wasn't because they made the most money. That meant nothing. it's really because I felt they were the classiest people that I ever met in my life. I mean, I saw them behave over year after year after year in a way that I could write their story on the front page of any newspaper, and even in an unfriendly tone, and I could not do anything that would embarrass them in the least. They behaved extraordinarily well. And having the right heroes, is terribly important. You tell me who a 10-year-old's heroes are, and I can give you a pretty good prediction about how they're going to turn out. You want to choose your heroes very carefully, because you're going to look like them at some point, and you're lucky if you've got the right ones. I'll give you an aside, and then we'll get on to your questions. But it's something, you're not parents yet, most of you. But when you're a parent, you are the natural hero of your child. I mean, you're this great big thing, or there's two of you great big things, and there's a little tiny child dependent on everything. You are the natural hero, and anything they get to school, subsequent everything else, they're going to be shaped more by what they see in this behavior of yours toward them than anything that will impact them later in their lives. And if they want you to be the hero, you can destroy that, of course, and you've seen it done many, many times. But actually, if the parents are proper heroes, the child is about 90% of the way home. And you're lucky if you've had parents like that, and you can be that to your children, or you can be something else, and you're shaping that person. It's nice to learn accounting when you get to Nebraska, but the behavior model that you take on is incredibly important. When I came down today, it's been 54 years since I drove down what was then the Highway 6, the Cornhusker Highway, to come to Lincoln to school. And even then, there was a lot of nostalgia attached with it, because my father had attended the University of Nebraska in the 1920s. He was editor of the Daily Nebraskan, and one day a young woman from West Point, a student, came in to apply for a job as a reporter on the Daily Nebraskan, and my father not only hired her as a reporter, but he married her shortly thereafter. So both my parents attended here. My grandfather, on my mother's side, was here in the 1890s, and so a lot of good things have happened to me because of the University of Nebraska. I received a terrific education here. I was telling the dean the most valuable thing I learned here, but I learned a lot, but the most valuable was accounting, and we had a wonderful professor named Ray Dean. There may even be something named for him down here, isn't there? Yeah, he was, I'd been to the Wharton School. I went to Columbia Graduate School subsequently, and I took a lot of accounting courses, but by far the best instruction I received in accounting came from Ray Dean, and there's nothing more important. People ask me what they should take in business school, and or even if they don't go to business school, what they need to know before getting in business. And I tell them, you have to understand accounting. It's the language. I mean, it's like being in a foreign country without knowing the language if you're in business and you don't understand accounting. So you want to get as comfortable with that as you are with the English language. It's made me a lot of money, because I listened to what Ray Dean had to say 53 or 4 years ago, and have been able to understand what I was seeing on pieces of paper, what that told me about businesses, and the limitations of what it told me about businesses. But that's the way we invest. Yesterday, I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we bought a company. We agreed to buy a company called Clayton Homes about a week ago. It's a big company in the manufactured home business. We agreed to pay $1.7 billion for it. I made that deal over the phone without ever meeting the people there, but I had seen enough through reading 10Ks, 10Qs, annual reports, but looking at figures, what they tell me in terms of the kind of people even running the place, the kind of accounting decisions they make, and so on. I was able to make that $1.7 billion transactions over the phone. Yesterday was the first time I met the people, and their board of directors had actually approved the deal a week earlier. I couldn't have done that if I hadn't have had a great time at Ray Dean's class 53 years ago. So if I'm going to tout one thing, aside from this particular leadership class, of course, if I'm going to tout one thing, I would tell you that get comfortable with it. It may not happen the first week or the first month in the class, but get very comfortable with accounting. So that I run into CEOs periodically who really don't understand it. And they try to bluff their way through. You can see in their faces, they're frightened almost when somebody hands them a balance sheet or an income statement. They really don't know what it means, and they have to count on somebody else. And that's something you shouldn't count on. We make all our acquisition decisions ourselves. I mean, we don't call in consultants or anybody. We don't call in investment bankers, much to their disgust. No investment banking fees in the Clayton Homes deal, because it's my responsibility running Berkshire to understand enough about our acquisition decisions to make them based on the numbers that I see and what I see there. This course, however, is about leadership, and I'd like to talk just for a minute about that, and then I'd like to really talk about whatever's on your mind, and we'll get questions. But leadership obviously it's a very simple thing in concept. Let's talk about what's on your mind now.
Good morning. When you were rejected from Harvard Business School, it's obviously somewhat of a failure in your mind. How do you adapt to your failures in life to make you more successful?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. How do you turn failure into a plus? It's true. When I was at the University of Nebraska, one day I was reading the Daily Nebraskan, and it said in room 300 or something, at 3 o'clock, there will be this panel of 3 professors here at the university, and they're going to award the Nathan Gold Scholarship. I don't know what you still have that around. And at the time, it said it was graduate school of your choice. I don't know whether it's changed in the amount, but that was it. So I read this, and I went there to this room at 3 o'clock that day or whatever it was, and I walked in the room, and there were the professors, and I was the only student that showed up. I mean, it really got to them. I mean, they were stuck. They kept waiting and looking at their watch and hoping there'd be more candidates, but no one came in. So I won $500 by default, and those are usually my biggest triumphs when nobody else shows up. And so here I was. I had $500 to go toward it wasn't limited. It was any graduate school for a master's degree. So I applied to Harvard. My dad wanted me to. And I shortly heard from Harvard, and they said, go to Chicago and meet this fellow who interviews applicants from the Midwest. So I got on the train, and that's what you did in those days. And I spent about 10 hours on the Burlington going to Chicago. Then I transferred to another little interurban train to go up to this country day school where this fellow was the headmaster, and he was the big interviewer for Harvard. And I got there, and after about 10 minutes, he said, better think about something else. But, he come back later on. I was 19 at the time, and I looked about 12, and I acted about 8. It was not a great combination. So he said, forget it. So I took a little interurban train back to Chicago, and I took the 10-hour train back to Omaha. And all the time, what do I tell my parents? It's kind of embarrassing. But it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Because if I'd gone to Harvard, I would have gone to a 2-year business school. I instead applied to Columbia where I could graduate in 1 year and get a master's degree. Luckily, by the accident of it and being in the Nebraska National Guard, which did not get called up for the Korean War, I missed going in the Korean War. I got to meet Ben Graham, which had an enormous effect on me subsequently. And I probably got my wife that way because she was going to Northwestern. And I was able to put on sort of a full court press because I got out in 1 year. And otherwise, she'd have met some other guy. I mean, I got her before the competition showed up. And so it worked out wonderfully. It couldn't have worked out better. That's been my life, basically. I mean, things, you will get some disappointments, but the future is what counts. It'd be fun if I knew every decision I was going to be perfect. It would not be as much fun. It'd be like playing golf and knowing you're going to hit a hole-in-one on every hole. You wouldn't play golf if every time you got on a tee, you just took a swing and the ball ended up in the hole. It'd be fun for a few days. You get on TV, but the game would not be any fun. So it's failure, and I wouldn't even consider them failures, but they're mistakes or whatever you want to call them. They're part of the game, and in the end, you go on and we made plenty of mistakes in business. We'll make plenty more. And the Babe Ruth and for a long time, it subsequently got eclipsed by a few fellows, but he held the record for strikeouts. He also held the record for home runs and was the highest paid baseball player until the modern era came along. So it's part of the game. If you take big swings, you're going to miss sometimes. But the Harvard thing, you'll get a kick out of this. They invited me back to the 25th anniversary of this class to talk to them, and I went back. It was kind of embarrassing because this was the 25th reunion, and the class was talking about the next 25 years to these alumni that were back after 25 years. And my job was to talk about the next your financial future in the next 25 years. This was in, whenever it was, in the mid-70s. And right before me on the program, Masters and Johnson were talking about the next 25 years of their sex lives. So nobody stayed around for my talk. But that night at the alumni meeting, the fellow who was president of the class stood up and said, we're big enough to admit when we make mistakes around here, and we turn this guy down and throw him back in the water. And so now we'd like to make him an honorary member of the class. So they did it, and they voted, and everybody voted for it. And I stood up and I said, I recited the story that I told you. And I told him, I said, at the time I was kind of philosophical about this. I was young and maybe my grades weren't that good or something. And so I took the rejection kind of well. But I said, now that I've met the people that got into class, I'm really sore. Okay, who's next?
I guess my question to you is, after you're dead, how do you want to be remembered? And how do you go about in your daily life ensuring that you're going to be remembered enough?
Yeah, well, really, I only want the minister to say one thing at my funeral. If he gets up there, and they play a few little hymns and everything, maybe they'll play There Is No Place Like Nebraska. That'd be great. I just want him to stay up there and say, my God, he was old. I'll settle for that. But the truth is that to some extent, Berkshire is my creation. So I would like, to the extent that people regard that well, that's what counts. I mean, that's my painting. And I hope that people look at, I've been running out for almost 38 years, about 38 years exactly. And it means I only got another 30 or 40 to go. And I hope that we have done some things differently than other corporations. We've operated on a different model. And I hope two things about it, actually. I hope, A, that people realize that model works and why it works and so on, because it does conflict with certain management theory over the years. And secondly, the important thing is that it lasts well beyond me. I was down at Walmart 6 months ago and talked to their management group, and I had a great time. What is really astounding, I voted for Walmart as the most admired company in the country last year. That's where my vote went. It was astounding what Sam Walton built, starting in Bentonville, Arkansas, with a pickup truck, taking on J.C. Penney and Kmart and Sears and all of these people with no money, no real estate, no preference with vendors, no credit card list, anything. He just took them on, and of course he just ran away from them. But the really impressive thing about Walmart is that Sam died about 11 years ago, and there's been no momentum lost. I mean, what he instilled in that company, nobody else could have built it like Sam. But David Glass first and Lee Scott now as the CEO, they have kept that company with its special culture going at full steam ever since. And that's really what I hope happens with Berkshire. And I've tried to think about ways to make that happen. But the real test will be if 10 or 20 years after I die, that the special culture that I think is part of Berkshire is not only just as strong as ever, but even stronger. We have a situation at Berkshire where in 38 years, we got all kinds of CEOs up there running all kinds of businesses, 3 or 4 of them in Omaha. We have never had one CEO ever leave us, period, to go someplace else. I mean, I don't know that there's any place like that in the country. So it's been and we've never issued a stock option. You read in the papers that you got to have stock options to attract quality people, all that sort of thing. I mean, we've never had a share of them. And in the end, I don't know how many dozens of managers we're talking about, but no one has ever left for another job. And some of them been offered way more money. In fact,
Okay, wala na akong oras. Pasensya na po mga suki. Tapos lang oras, no?
female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Awesome! 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 Okay, kalahati lang po ang lecture ni Warren Buffett, no? Okay, so tama na. Tama naman ang public service. Okay, tatapusin natin po ang istorya sa araw nito. Okay. Dito pa rin sa programa natin ng Service Publiko Tinik ng Consolidated News natin po mga kababayan, nakalimutan na, no? Okay, sa ADLSNTV News Online, and then sa programa Halo-Halo Special, Opinion, Balita at iba pa, no? Okay, at saka ugnayan ng mamamayan. Okay, wala tayong masamang tinapay sa lahat. Okay, paalam tayo doon sa Spain. Naman lamang po mga kababayan, no? Pagod ako 2 araw po hook up. Okay, sa Cotabato City, no? Okay. So, bye-bye na.
Ang programa ito ay public service